We are assembled here this afternoon for a very special panel discussion on the topic Vision 2030, which is also the theme for this year's meet. The idea of vision has a very different meaning for every individual. One thing that binds us together is that a set vision guides us to stay on track with a greater purpose and to navigate obstacles. Today, we are honored to have an expert set of panel members who are our own distinguished alumni joining us to share their perspective on this topic. I would like to request Professor Sumija, Honorary Secretary for Alumni Association, to join us on stage to present the panel members with a token of appreciation. I request the panel members to please grace the stage as I introduce them. Our first panelist joining today is Mr. Digant Haria. Mr. Digant graduated as part of the PGDIM 14 batch. He is also a recipient of NITIE's prestigious Alumni Award in the year 2019. He is the co-founder of GreenEdge Wealth Management, where he helps working professionals to get a better grip over their equity and bond investments. His views are regularly solicited by platforms and publications like CNBC and ET Now. Thank you, sir, for gracing us with your presence. Our next panelist is Mr. Prashant Kumar Kale. Mr. Prashant Kumar Kale is an alumnus of the PGDIE 26 batch who currently holds the position of Associate Director of Business Transformation in Accenture. He has 24 years of rich experience in the field of business transformation, lean implementation, and supply chain. Prior to Accenture, he led several leadership positions in Mahindra & Mahindra and Hewlett-Packard. Thank you so much for being here, sir. The next panelist joining us is Mr. Rajat Mahajan. Mr. Rajat was part of the PGDIM 8 batch. He's a consulting partner with Deloitte and has 19 years of rich experience of consulting in industry. He's led multiple large-scale transformation programs across globe. He has worked with cross-section of Indian and global companies across varied sectors like retail, automotive, and hospitality. We are honored to have you, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Rahul Nene. Mr. Rahul Nene is a PGDI SEM 11 batch pass out. He currently heads sustainability at Huhtamaki and is an expert in ESG practices and reporting frameworks. He's also worked as head of corporate sustainability at Deloitte in past and has a lot of experience in EHS industry with leading group EHS at ACT FiberNet. He also worked with L'Oreal as an EHS and sustainability head for 7 years. We are grateful to have you here, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Ganesh Iyer. Mr. Ganesh Iyer graduated as a part of the PGDIM 10 batch. He currently leads value discovery and solutions at Pando. He works with clients globally to help them improve and digitize their supply chains. Prior to Pando, Mr. Ganesh led the manufacturing consulting team at Cognizant, and he has worked with NITIE over years on several initiatives to the Industry Institute collaboration. Thank you for being here, sir. I request Director Sir to please join us on stage and continue with the felicitation. Our next panelist is Mr. Pavan Sarda. Mr. Pavan Sarda is an alumnus of the PGDIE 32 batch of NITIE. Currently, he holds the position of Director in Supply Chain Design Domain in MSD Pharmaceuticals, which is a subsidiary of Merck & Co. in US. He has 18 years of rich experience majorly in the domain of supply chain consultancy and has worked in various firms, including IBM India and Cognizant Solutions. Thank you, sir, for your presence. Lastly, the moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Maulik Desai. Mr. Desai has more than 10 years of experience in the FMCG industry and is currently working as Customer Service and Logistics Head for West India at Mondelez International. He is a PGDIM 17 batch pass out. He's founded the Safarist, a travel technology platform to connect travelers based on their interests and bring together high-quality user-generated content. We thank you, sir, for being here and taking up this responsibility. I now request Mr. Desai to please take over the panel discussion. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Rashika, for that wonderful introduction. Really glad to be here and a part of Sansmaran, and I'm sure the other speakers are as glad as well. A wonderful topic, Vision 2030. And I was just thinking that, let's say we all were here in the January of 2020, then how, and discussing the same topic, how wrong we would have been. And this discussion would have been so different. And we used to read about black swan events, but we realized that these things can now actually happen in our lifetimes. And not just COVID, even as we speak here, there's a war happening in Europe. When the war started, Russia-Ukraine, people were saying it will get over in 7 days, but it's 8 months, and it's still going on. So such an important time to be discussing Vision 2030, and such a wonderful panel of stalwarts from across industries, across functions, to speak on this very important topic. So why don't I just start by going around the table to hear those initial thoughts on why this is such an important time and why the next 8 years are so important for India as an economy and as a country, from your areas of expertise and work.
Hello, am I audible? So right now, if you see, we are 5th largest economy from the nominal GDP point of view, right? But if we look at the per capita GDP point of view, we are 142nd rank. So that proves we have done a lot of good progress, a lot of growth in the last few years. I still remember when I was studying at NITIE, there was a book from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Vision 2020. I was recently looking into it. A lot of things we have achieved, especially from the GDP growth point of view. But we can define this growth more as a jobless growth or unbalanced growth, because we are still not able to give the employment to a lot of people, as well as our growth is still more of an urbanization. There is a lot of imparity between the growth where we had it. And by 2030, I think everyone is saying that we will be the 3rd largest economy in the world. But I think with this kind of a jobless growth or a unbalanced growth, we cannot sustain this kind of growth. So if we really want to be 3rd largest economy, we have to take action right now, and that's why it's the right time to do it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think there is an excellent frame in terms of what the future looks like and what potential is out there. When I think about it, and if I wear a little bit of my consulting stroke technology hat that I played over the years, I see two is going to be key over the next 7 to 8 years as we come to 2030. And obviously all of this is when I talk about the future, and the first thing I'm always reminded is Yogi Berra saying, predictions are really hard, especially about the future. With that out of the way, I think 3 things will be really key. The first one would be how the consumer preferences would change over time. If we think out there, because each one of us, the way we thought, the way we bought, and how impatient we were has massively changed. And that will continue to change. We will continue to become more impatient. So the consumer preference is going to change. Second, businesses will have to become more agile. It is going to be obviously very, very important, and we've seen that with COVID. Finally, I think technology is going to play a really important role. That's how I think about these 3 foundational mega trends as we think about the next few years.
Thank you. So I speak more from my domain, which is more of sustainability and ESG, right? The more popular term today. So coincidentally, 2030 is a very, it's a milestone year when we speak of sustainability, because whatever the movement around sustainability started, or ESG started with the development of United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, SDGs as we call them, which got established in 2015 and put a certain target on 169 indicators globally to be achieved by the year 2030. And if you start thinking about them, starting from environmental to social to poverty, there are 6 principles on dignity, etc. And if you see, the COVID pandemic has significantly impacted the progress of every country, every corporation, every set out every entity in the world when it came to the progress towards achieving these SDGs. So, I mean, when we look at now India, so if you see there are 17 goals, out of which India is struggling to meet about 11 of them. Probably will not meet. The one target that we were very much on track, which was related to climate action, which was SDG 13, I think that they say, in the last 2 years again has gone down. So if you see out of what 163 countries, our rating fell from a ranking of 117 to 121 in the last 2 years. So India, so to say, while the economic growth and etc. is happening on one end, how do we manage or how do we are able to achieve these targets will be the critical challenge. From whatever people are speaking, because of the impact of the pandemic, the progress now needs to be doubled in the next 8 years to achieve or at least reach a close enough status to reach the 2030 objectives. And in parallel, we have something called as science-based targets, which says by 2050 the temperature rise should not be more than 1.5 degrees as compared to pre-industrial levels. And there's a milestone in that the world emissions should reduce in absolute numbers by half by the year 2030. And again, we are, as a globe, we are nowhere near that. So overall, on these two streams of work, I think there is going to be a lot of push through the industry that we are working at a government level, at a regulation level, and at a society level. And so I think that's the key challenge. That's where the vision is by science, and probably this is where we'll be in the next 8 years.
Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you for having me here. Just on a lighter note, when you started, right, 2020, we all consultants keep projecting things, right? Probably this time we would have been right because the digital transformation happened much faster compared to how people used to project earlier. On a slightly realistic note, what I believe is, I think I'll be cautiously optimistic for the next 8 years. Right, obviously ESG, one very interesting topic that was brought up by Rahul. But if you look at it, right, what are the positives? We are not, like everybody's talking about Vietnam is getting so much investments, etc. But they're technically not a consumer economy. They don't have that much consumption. So positive side is, like what Ganesh was saying, we have huge consumer base, right? And this is a young consumer. I think our median age would be 25, 26 right now. So it's a young economy, consuming economy, and kind of a restless, impatient, but at the same time a connected economy. Just a quick data point, right? I mean, if you look at 5 years back, the number of devices per capita was 0.5. 2 years back, it was 2. 3 years hence, it is going to be 140. Which means those are the number of devices that any human will interact with. And this is, I'm talking about India right now.
140.
Okay. So if you look at that one part, there is a huge consumerism angle, right? We are a solid consumption organization or country. But on the other side, the policies, right? These policies also need to be consistent throughout. I'll pick one example, electrification. We all talk about electrification. We are right now, that is the biggest import bill that we have. Maybe I think we have, blending is happening around 8% right now, target for 20%, but still that is not going to solve the purpose. Okay, so if you look at China, right, there have been really very, very solid policy focus that has come. I think this government also is, last 8-10 years, we've seen some consistency. So the second part where I am saying cautious is the government policies need to be consistent for this entire real big demand to explode, so to say. And the last point over here is another important metric that we monitor is private credit to GDP ratio, which is probably we can speak more about. Okay, he's trying to increase. It's around 50%, 56% right now in India, probably, but it can go really, really high. I mean, that's where we get a lot of money beyond FDIs and other private sectors investing. So, cautiously optimistic is my view.
Thanks, Rajat. Wonderful.
Thank you. So I think we are standing at a very exciting period of time in the history. Right? As Pavan was saying earlier, we don't celebrate the India story enough. and I think that is what we need to do, right? So from being a Vishwaguru of 2000 years back to being the number one economy in the world right up to the 15th, 16th century, and then going through the whole invasions and colonization, right? So India has seen it all. India has a lot to be done. We are actually at a and somebody calls it as a last mover advantage, because in this whole economic development of the last 100 years, India has seen the other countries progressing. So whether to go for urbanization like China, where it is very centric to few of the centers, or to go for urbanization like Germany, which is very spread out across. So those choices we can make informed choices. So I'm very bullish about the India story, and I think somebody talked about the Black Swan event, right? So like in the Ramayana, the Lord Hanuman had to be reminded of his powers. So India, I think, has been reminded of its powers in this COVID times, and then the way we have come out as a very confident country, handling the health part of it, the whole vaccination drive, right? There is no parallel in the world on that front. We are considered as the pharmacy of the world. So, and then even through this war, we have seen that India has stayed very confident, not giving in to the pressures. So I think this is the right time, and we are looking forward to see the whole thing itself, right? We are talking about vision, and from a hand-to-mouth economy of few decades back, if we are talking about vision, I think nobody can stop it. That's how it is.
Thanks, I'll try this one. Okay, it's audible, right? So, okay, so like when I passed out in 2009, post that I joined JP Morgan, and in 2011 we had a very similar conclave. It was the Economic Times conclave that Vision 2020, and India will become that. Good things were said then. Unfortunately, we could not achieve a lot of them. Lot of reasons for that, but two big reasons were we never grew in the manufacturing sector. The services sector kept on doing well, but services sector can only absorb 1, 2, 3 crores of the Indian population. For more people to participate, that's the point which Pavan made in the first opening comments. Manufacturing growth never happened. India had a banking system which was completely rotten. Our currency was not stable. A lot of things went wrong. So then, now when we again talk that the next 10 years can be really good for India, I think it makes sense to look back in history. Prashant ji just pointed out that India was the largest economy. So just to give you the context, India's golden age was 380 to 580, that Gupta dynasty time. India's GDP was 30% then. So from that 30%, we went down to 1.6% in 1947, the time British left India. So that was a very catastrophic fall. But when you look at the Gupta dynasty time, why did India contribute to 30% of GDP of India? I think the reasons were that everybody in the country, a large part of the population can participate in growth. There were roads made, people. There was security. There was political stability. There were colleges which advanced in Ayurveda, which advanced in astronomy. So a lot of these things flourish when there is stability. So if we look back, if we look at the last 20 years, I think two really big things have happened. That the physical infrastructure in India is really ready. Like we have been building 30 kilometers of highways for so many years. So connectivity is the best in the last 100 years that India has ever had. And we spent last 6-7 years doing, what is called as the India stack, the Aadhaar, the Jan Dhan, the eKYCs. So now a lot of people can participate in the economy in the digital way. So you have two very, very big highways which are ready. One is the physical highway, roads, ports, airports, railways, and then there is the digital highway, which is this entire digital stack. So I think I am very cautiously, I would not say cautiously optimistic. I am extremely optimistic that this decade we will really shoot for the stars, mainly because these two things are ready. A lot of hard work has been done in the last 10 years, and India does not have any debt. India's debt to GDP is the lowest. So, the Americans or the Russians or the Saudis, they cannot pressurize us beyond a certain point. So I really think that, we have played it well. Last 20 years, India was so-called office to the world, outsourcing and IT services boomed. I think next 10 years, we can become the factory to the world. So, that is where I see India going in the next 10 years. And I'm sure a lot of people in the panel have far more experience on the manufacturing. I'll, pass it over to Molly.
Thanks. That's wonderful opening comments, and right from cautiously optimistic to extremely optimistic. So I think, but definitely there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic and excited for our future. So I think Rajat mentioned consumption. So extremely important point. While exports, private investment, government spending are obviously as important, but India still continues to be a consumption-driven economy. 60% of GDP. And I think that will also be a potent force in realizing a vision of 2030. So what are those key trends that you think will shape the consumption story or the consumer as we go from a $2,700 GDP per capita to maybe say 5,000, 10,000?
Yeah, I think when you speak about consumers in India, right, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, India is a young economy at the end of the day. There are few trends that we see. One is obviously, from a consumer standpoint, it's going to be commerce everywhere. People would like to transact anywhere, anytime, etc. So the traditional journeys which are very linear, right, they are not linear anymore. Okay, so that's one big trend that we see. Second is about hyper personalization. Right? So everybody, like for example, when we did a recent survey, we realized that 71% of the Indians said that the most important thing for them is, value my time. Okay, so those you remember, probably a few years back we used to book an Uber, Ola, etc., or normal taxis 15 years back. We are okay to wait for 30 minutes. But now, if you book an Uber and it shows 7 minutes, you will immediately open an Ola and can I get it in 2 minutes? So this is, how can you personalize things, make it available, accessible, faster, is again big thing. Another trend that is coming is about, experiential innovation, okay, which is this new consumer would like to experience, right, a lot more than what they have were experiencing earlier. So I'll give you a couple of examples, and one example from the government itself, so which government is also trying to emulate internally. But let's say, earlier we used to go to all these travel destinations. I think, one of you opened a travel portal, etc. But so nowadays people have so much visibility and availability of data information to access before you go at any place, right? So despite having two big giants controlling 93% of the global travel trade, which is Expedia and Booking, but it is in a way kind of helping consumer, okay, providing access. But on the other side, there is always a flip side to things that they are doing the monopoly. Right? But when I say experience, people are immersing themselves in a much different fashion compared to what they were doing earlier. The government, I was saying, is metaverse. We've all seen. Even government is now learning, and interestingly, we are also involved in some of the things where digital sunset. Mr. Modi wants to have a parliament affairs done on metaverse, so to say. So this is the third biggest trend that we are seeing. And another trend that I would think of is ecosystems. All right, because consumer is not. We've seen you don't want to go to an app, open and buy, right? You want to see everything together at one place. So the ecosystem plays, right, are going to be much bigger. Okay, so if you connect, and there are obviously I can go on and on for these trends from a consumer standpoint, but there are other interesting. 30% of two-wheeler registrations are being done in the name of women. Okay, 75% of the new commerce that is going to happen okay, e-commerce is going to happen on mobile, and that too in the rural India. Okay, so putting all these things together, Indian consumer, in my view, is going to really push everybody, the other stakeholders in the ecosystem, whether it is government, private sector, etc., and make themselves so attractive that everybody would want to come and service this consumer.
Thanks, Rajat. I think clearly coming out that the Indian consumer story is going to play on and on. And probably, Digant, you mentioned about being extremely optimistic. So like you said, there's a lot of exuberance about the Indian economy. So we were thinking about 5 trillion by 25. Might not happen, 26, 27. But at the same time, there are a lot of global headwinds as well. There's a global recession talks about it. How do you see the Indian economy shaping over the next 8 years? And do you think we can hit something like 10 trillion by 2030?
Yeah, I think the number is not important, whether it is 10 trillion or 7 trillion. I think the first good part is we are going in the right direction. The boat has sailed in the right direction. Because we've done a lot of hard work in the last 10 years. The ground, when we talk about a vision, we have to lay the foundation. That foundation is very much there. So now, first you ask about the global headwinds. I think the global headwinds for India are clearly an opportunity. We did not side with the Russians, nor the Europeans, nor the Americans. Rather, we said that, hey, if you're worried about China and Europe, India has, low cost manpower, will supply you with good land, and we have good manufacturing capability. So why not come in India and put factories here? And we are seeing a mega boom in this entire sector. We saw this Foxconn putting a 1 lakh crores of investment. I think this is much needed in India because while we say the consumer story of India is extremely strong, I would really like to differentiate that. See, the top 1 crore Indians, they spend like the Americans because they really have the spending power. The next 5 crore Indians probably spend like Bangladeshis, and the next 50-60 crores they spend like Africa. That's how different the Indian consumer is. So if you look at some examples, that Tanishq jewelry is growing at 18% in terms of volumes, but HUL is reporting 2% volume growth in categories like soaps and ice creams and things like that. So it just tells you that the top 1 crore families in India are doing extremely well. They are the ones who are traveling. They are the ones who are buying the nice cars, the nice houses. I think this number has to really broad base for us to achieve that 10 trillion, because you can't have the 1 crore people doing the same spending again and again and again. So I think that this manufacturing boom is very important, and these global headwinds are extremely important, that we attract other investments. Otherwise before COVID, India was never seen as a big manufacturing investment. Before this Russia war, India was seen as an alternative to Europe also, where low cost manufacturing can happen. So I would like to think the war is a critical, the geopolitics is very, very dangerous. And when US, the dominant position of US has been challenged now by Russia on one side, and the Arabs on the other side, and India is trying to stay neutral. We will face a lot of challenges. A lot of times we will be asked to prove our loyalty. Till now we have done a fantastic job. We have said, हम किसी के साथ नहीं हैं, हम इंडिया का भला देखेंगे. And I think that is what will drive the next 5-6 crore jobs. We really need those jobs, for more consumption to happen. For example, two-wheeler sales. 7 years there is no growth in two-wheelers. Two-wheelers, like, think is used two-wheel. I think this mic. Yeah, two-wheelers are used by everyone else but those top 1 crore Indians. And if they are not growing, there's a problem with the economy. So yeah, I think the ground is set. Manufacturing boom is here. If we do it well, I really think 2030, if not 10 trillion, we will be close to that number.
Great, amazing. And I think very important point you mentioned about, the pyramid cannot keep getting narrower. The whole economy needs to be broad-based as we grow. I think on that note, you mentioned manufacturing. Maybe I'll pose this to Prashant. So manufacturing has always been like the dark horse of the Indian economy. But still, if you look at the whole GDP, its share is about 15%. Much lower than services, which is more than 50%. Now there is a growing realization that India needs to be Atmanirbhar. We have schemes coming into like the PLI, things like that, probably China plus one, etc. How do you see manufacturing as a sector shaping up, and what do we really need to do to kind of tap this opportunity, because that's going to create jobs at the end of the day?
Right, yeah. So I think I'll start with services, right? So services has been our success story in the last 20 years. And if you look at that, right, because we had the people who were available to those services, do those kind of services, the IT outsourcing, and we were able to supply those people. The universities were able to supply, and that is where we have seen the whole services success story. So for manufacturing, what I believe is that there are two factors, right? To grow manufacturing, one is labor productivity. We have to do much more than what we are doing today. Our labor productivity rates are much lower as compared to the developed economies as well as some of the other developing economies. And then second part is the capital productivity. So both the areas we need to do significant improvement, a significant transformation if we have to really be successful like China in the manufacturing space.
I think that's a great point. That's probably maybe next I'll come to Pavan. You obviously work for pharma, and you're interested in geopolitics as well. So there's, I think, a significant component of manufacturing is also going to be exports. So how do we really tap that opportunity? As the world starts thinking about China plus one, it's not as if India is the only China. That one might not be India. So what do we really need to do to tap that opportunity so that probably our exports can be 400 billion, trillion?
Yeah, that's true. When we say the China plus one, and that one may not be India. We already talk about Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand. There are many players who are actually competing that plus one label. But I think rather than China plus one, I would be more optimistic or more, I'll set my target more like we wanted to replace China itself. But right now, let's talk about China plus one. And to make that plus one to be India, I think we need to partially see what China has done. I'll give you one example. At one time, I think around 1995, 98, 2000, India was self-sufficient or self-supplied on active pharma ingredients. Today, 70% of our API is imported from China. So from self-sufficient, we went into importers of an API. Why has that happened? That has happened because while China is giving you more tax benefit, while China has ensure the cost of production is less, while China is making the cost of finance is less, they give a lot of tax offs available, and that's why everyone has moved there and they have set up their API factories there instead of and then we were nowhere to compete with whatever the China is supplying. And this has happened just with the pharma API. We know it has happened everywhere. Indian toy industries, every industry we have struggled with China. That's because they were able to produce at a cheaper cost and also better product. Not all Chinese products are low quality. They are manufacturing iPhone as well, right? So to do that, I think this is the right time. If we still get into our different kind of local politics or regional politics, even we now recently hear that, right? This semiconductor industry went to Gujarat, there is a local Maharashtrian politicians come up. But this is the right time we have to unite and see it as a one India, one country. And then we have to start looking into our policies. What is the best policy and where we need to set it up. Now coming to the export also, I think there is a very fantastic idea which has been come up and government is very much promoting that is one district, one product. So what happened is, and this is very much related to the unbalanced growth which I just mentioned few minutes back. What happened is right now all manufacturing industries, they are setting up in the urban areas. And let's say you are producing cotton in Vidarbha. That cotton is going to Marathwada in Ichalkaranji to make it as a yarn. Then it goes to the UP to make it fabric. Over a period of time, if you see, we are actually adding a lot of logistical cost to our products. So first of all, we are not cheap. Then on top of that, we are adding unnecessary logistical cost to it. So what we need to do is we need to build a cluster. So we need to identify what is the best place for a particular product. And that's where the concept is one district, one product, or rather I would say one product, one district, because one district can have a multiple products as well. So if you identify that, then you ensure you set up everything for that particular product in that district, you reduce your logistical cost, you build a skill. Now people in that district know what is the skills they need to build. So they can very easily build that skills. So that way we can actually ensure we build a skill, we ensure we have a low cost products as well as the high quality products. That is, I think, is a good idea to go for.
That's a wonderful idea, and I think very important to implement these kind of things, because in exports we do not have that cost advantage like we had for services. Like a US probably would be half or 20% of the cost, but for in exports we are competing with Vietnam, China, which may be lower the cost as well. So absolutely, thanks for that. Maybe Ganesh, next, when we talk about jobs or economy or accelerating growth, the startups always come in the conversation. Today India is home to more than 100 unicorns, and I was reading somewhere that we have about 180 sunicorns, which we now call them. At the same time, there's also concerns about profitability. We keep hearing about startups laying off hundreds and thousands of people. So how do you think this industry is going to shape over the next 8 years, and what will be its role in realizing Vision 2030?
Yeah, fantastic. I think a lot of great points have been made, and I want to connect a couple of them back to startups, Maulik. So Rajat spoke about ecosystems. Now, when you think about, if you then combine that with the fact that the manufacturing has to explode, I see startups, and particularly within that, the Indian SaaS startups, software as a service startups playing a vital role there, right? And if you think about it as an ecosystem, you think about all of the emerging needs that are going to come up as a result of growth. This whole segment is going to play a very critical role. Just to give a sense of numbers, we are currently at about that is Indian SaaS is about 2% of global SaaS. By 2030, estimates are this will be anywhere between 7 to 10%. So we are going to see massive, explosive growth in this segment. And I think the ingredients, that fuel this growth have evolved over the last decade. If you think about the last decade, a lot of it was about financial arbitrage to some extent, some talent arbitrage. I think it's a confluence of factors that are now coming into play, and I think of it as 4 factors here. The first thing is about the right talent. So India, I think the beautiful thing about Indian talent is you'll always have a creme de la creme talent, and then you'll have the next level waiting to step up in the next wings in the basically to step up the game, right? So that will always be there. So talent, while we are in a stage today where it's overheated, you're always going to have adequate talent, unlike a lot of developed nations. So that is going to be one core ingredient. The other ingredient is going to be ideas, and I think with India, there's never been a paucity of really innovative ideas that will fuel it. When you combine talent, ideas with money coming in either from India or from outside, and perhaps combine that with execution, I think you've got a killer formula for explosive growth that can fuel everything else. Be it PM Gati Shakti, which is for which technology is a core backbone, which needs its own ecosystem, or just plain manufacturing growth.
Thanks, Ganesh. I think that's a great theme there, and I'm sure the COVID has accelerated the entire digital process by quite a margin. This is going to play a very important role in the future as well. Rahul, next to you, I think some very interesting points and a lot of optimism in general. But all of this has to be done in a sustainable way, right? I mean, sustainability is no longer a luxury or a point on a slide. It's become imperative, business imperative. I mean, every month or maybe we are seeing some climate crisis across the world, which definitely hits productivity. So how, and as you said in your opening note, we are, or rather the world itself is behind on a lot of its targets. How do we really reach there? If you want to be 50% of power should be renewable or net zero or whatever, how do we eventually reach there? And what can we do? What can policies or private?
Yeah, I think Maulik, thank you. It's a great question. And I mean, first of all, I would really appreciate all the points that came in. It's a lot of food for thought. Coming to the question directly, I think first, I think we need to think what is sustainability. Right? When we think of sustainable, what are we trying to sustain? Many people think of sustainability as saving the planet. But when you look at corporate sustainability, it's not that. The thought process is the planet probably will exist. It existed from the dinosaurs, it managed to exist, and it will continue to exist. What corporations are trying to sustain is their own business, so to say, in the ever-changing environment, which is being caused by the human impact on the environment, right? So most companies, if you see, they are trying to sustain in this VUCA world that we speak of, and so we need to understand there are two aspects to sustainability. One is how do we do the best for the environment as such, the planet as such, including the humans. We cannot decouple humans away from environment. Suddenly, they sometimes are pitted against each other. Just like man-animal conflict, so to say, they are pitted, but it's not. It has to be a cohesive growth. In that sense, one aspect is sustaining life on the planet. The other thing is sustaining businesses, and to achieve both these objectives, right? It has to be a cohesive effort. It cannot be one entity, one aspect, one player driving everything. A lot of it, I personally feel, at least when I speak of India, comes through regulatory push. In the last 3 years that I have seen, I'll take examples of, say, plastic waste management rules. I'm in packaging or FMCG sector. The kind of push that it has given to the industry is phenomenal, to be honest. 5 years previously, I could never think of a company collecting sales equivalent amount of plastic and recycling it back. And forget the intent, there was no infrastructure. There is a massive boom, and it is being done in an economical way. So there is profits out of it. So this is one example. Now there is battery waste management rules. There is a lot of focus on electricity. The new electricity rules came in 3 months ago. So a lot of regulatory push is coming through, and that is making industries, and that is creating a value chain, to be honest. We never thought of, honestly, our garbage collectors. We never thought of them. Today they are getting impacted by some of the regulations. Their life is getting improved. So this regulatory push is going to be very critical when it comes to India, I feel. That's point number one. Point number two, I genuinely, and this is purely out of experience, somewhere we as a country, right, when it comes to regulations, there is a lot of mismatch. On paper, the regulations are beautiful, to be honest. See, again, taking the same example, plastic waste management rules, on paper they are amazing. But when it comes to implementation, that's where the biggest challenge comes in, because say the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board does not agree with the Central Pollution Control Board, and when it actually comes to implementation, we cannot implement most of the things because there is a confusion, and this is prevalent throughout the industry across the last 10 years that I have been here. So this cohesiveness in terms of regulations at a central level, then at a state level, even to a district level, that needs to percolate. Industries need to come together. So now, I don't know if you know, India is the first Asian country to come out with something called as the India Plastics Pact, where only Europe has done this. There is a Europe Plastics Pact. Similarly, there is India Plastics Pact, where regulatory bodies, pollution control boards, industries, plastic manufacturers, everything have come together to define how we are going to manage the material plastic in India. Because of the menace, we recently had a statistic, India is the biggest plastic polluter in the world. So, how we are going to manage this particular material. Coming to renewable energy, right? I spoke of climate action. India has declared that it will have 50% renewable energy by the year 2030. There is fantastic subsidy that has been given to solar panels, for example. But, I mean, I'll be candid about it, the Maharashtra State Electricity Board has put in so many regulatory obstacles for a company to shift to renewable energy. Because ultimately it takes away revenue from the State Electricity Board when we go to renewable energy. So it's very difficult. And so the point here is, while many things are being done at a cohesive level on paper, the biggest challenge to achieve all of this is going to be the implementation of it. and the regulatory support or the ecosystem again that gets created because of this regulatory aspect. I think if that falls into place, a lot of things could still be achieved. And the other thing I feel sometimes is, and it's a principle in sustainability, localization. Right? We need not always follow what the West says. There are many things, like for example, our food plate that we say. There was a recent study I was reading. The Indian traditional food plate, if you do the carbon emission, the life cycle management of the traditional Indian meal, it's much lesser than any of the Western meals. So when our population consumes this meal, the life cycle emissions are far lesser than, say, a Western concept. So we need not follow everything. We need to think locally, what is our strength. We need to formulate policies accordingly. We need to understand what our challenges, which is our population. And then there has to be a cohesive approach from the regulatory bodies, then the industries that are existing, to kind of achieve it. And I genuinely feel that we have started in the right direction. I have absolute hope that we will be able to go there. But I would add that it's exciting times to be a part of this, and I'm hopeful.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. Clearly coming out to tackle a challenge of this scale, needs not just execution on paper, but on the ground as well. Thanks for that. So, Rajat, coming back to you, I think to realize a vision of 2030, it's very clear that it can't just be done based on an increase in output. Even the productivity needs to increase, and the digital or data analytics or Industry 4.0 is going to play a key role in this. So, as per you, what are the key trends that will be playing out over the next decade? And in order to kind of be adopt digital technologies to a far greater extent, we are on the right path with Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile, etc. But how do you see it playing out in the future?
Again, I maintain my stand on the cautious optimism, okay, here as well. But because anything to do with consumer, there is an inherent demand that exists, okay. And like, we just mentioned that consistency of policies are important. And I think that is one area where the government has been consistent. Okay, the India stack that he spoke about, right? I mean, it is probably one of the best across the world. So when it comes to pure play, you can say digital adoption as such, right? There are a few, I would say, trends, that we all are seeing. Okay? Ecosystem I spoke about, that is one of the biggest trends that we see again from a technology standpoint. Then, the entire usage of AI, okay. Now the use cases are so specific. It is not something that, like, I'll give you a couple of examples, right? I mean, people can now predict based on the data that you're getting on, let's say, based on the same Wi-Fi connection if you're ordering. So, let's say a Zomato or a Swiggy will send you SMS and 5 people will get the SMS. But if you are ordering from this, if all those 5 mobiles are connected to the same Wi-Fi, only one message will go, right? So it is also digital. As long as it is solving for some problem of the consumer, it will be adopted. Otherwise, it will become a nuisance, honestly speaking. So that's one example, right? Then there is another thing where we all speak about, I'll give you an example of how connected we are as a community, as consumers, right? I mean, we'd like to take test drives on demand wherever we want. Okay, but that's not how India is, right? I mean, one very interesting example I'll give, where we were working with a large automotive OEM in terms of, do we open only digital dealerships? Why do we need such physical Taj Mahals in small towns, etc.? And when you really deeply study the consumer, right, and one insight that really shook us was, I don't want to take test drive at home. This was a remark in a tier 3 town. Why? I don't want my neighbor to know that I'm buying a car. Okay, so some of those things still exist because that part of India still is elevating. So it's not, digital should not happen just for the heck of it. Okay, again, the same thing. If you're solving a problem, right, what is that guy's in tier 3 town? What is his problem? His problem is that if you can exchange his vehicle so that you can make the down payment faster. Okay, so we know, right? I mean, Car Dekho, Cars 24 has been invested by the same private equity. Now that same private equity has invested in a lending company. Now you've got the biggest problem in this exchange is the unsecured part of 30-45 days. and they are paying money instantly to the consumer. Now, can you take the same thing, same offering in the hinterlands, etc.? So that's another thing that we're seeing. And as I said, right, there are many more, but there are two very interesting things that excites me. One is blockchain, okay, which is underexplored right now because of many reasons. But I think I'm not sure whether a lot of us know, but government has already taken a few steps. There are land records which are getting moved into blockchain, but if we use some of those technologies where you have significant, you can say, as I said, one is you're solving the consumer problem, second is you're solving the regulatory problem. I'll give you, and this is on the borderline of ESG, again, let's say batteries, right? Now, batteries in India, automotive, you're saying it's for, or two-wheelers, they're saying 40%, penetration, four-wheelers, it's supposed to be 20%, and so on and so forth. Now, what is going to happen to all these batteries? Battery has a huge back-end, supply chain. You recycle, you remanufacture, refurbish, recertify, you do a lot of things. The moment you talk about recycling, there are regulations that will come in. So if we start investing, and this is the third type of technology I'm talking about, which is if you start investing in technologies like blockchain to track this entire chain, which not only helps you report to the regulatory authorities, but also it will help solve inefficiencies within the OEMs as well as the ecosystem, and gives much more visibility to the consumer. So that is the third type of technology, which is more about, it solves for a future problem. So just to summarize, right, any technology which solves for an immediate consumer problem, right, whether it is convenience, trust, anything of that nature, any technology which solves ecosystem problem, and the third is which solves a futuristic problem. Okay, so I would say that people should invest in these areas.
Wonderful insights, especially the summary, so well summed up. Thanks for that, Rajat.
I wanted to add on to that.
Sure, please.
So I think with digital thing, loved some of the points that Rajat made around having a true need, right? So I was having this conversation with a CIO a few months back. We were talking to them about fixing some basic plumbing, order management plumbing. Very soon the conversation turned to, hey, I want to do something with the metaverse. So here's a case where there are some really foundational issues that have to be fixed. Yet I think there's a good and bad. I guess there's the ambition, which is going to be really good, but then the mindset of running after the shiny new toy has to really change. I think from a digital success perspective, that comes to the fore again and again. There's a lot of potential out there. How do you curb your enthusiasm? Pick one direction, ensure it solves a business problem or a core customer concern, and then go after that. Just wanted to add to that.
Absolutely.
I'll extend it a little more. Sorry for this. I completely agree with that. It's not about shiny new toys or acquired tastes, but there's a company called Lemonade. Okay, I don't know. It's an insurance company which runs predominantly by two bots, Jim and Maya. Okay, 97% of the policies were sold by one AI bot. Okay, so 27,000 policies, claims were serviced by one bot. Now, if we look at our large population, which is not there in India, and use that technology in the vernacular language and do something, right? I mean, that again is something which is future back. Okay, but hopefully not a shiny toy.
Superb insights. Probably just moving on, Digant, we can't let you, this can't be over without asking this particular question. So let's say if all of us are investing today to get best returns in 2030, what are the investment themes that are going to play out, and how do you see the next decade in terms of wealth and investment?
And 3 stock picks.
I think 3 stock picks would be India. That's. but anyways, that jokes apart. I think India has been one of the most fantastic destinations to invest in the last 30 years. Probably only the US markets have done as well. Some parts of the reason is that India is blessed with good soil, good rivers. We produce a lot of our own food. We have young population. We underestimate how important it is to be young, the energy that youth can have. I think these are some factors why India has done so well, despite the policies not really being aligned towards business growth from say 1990 to 1920, 2020. So last 30 years, in investing circles, people say India grew despite the government. We always say that government itni badhaएं डालता है, फिर भी India grows, Indian businesses grow. So there's a lot of spirit of entrepreneurship. Young people want to grow. That's what they want to do. Now finally, I think we have a government also which wants businesses to prosper. 2019, the taxes on the corporates were cut for the first time after decades. So that makes me really optimistic on India in general. I think every one of you, if you are students, if you are working in corporates, if you are having your startups, the panelists are all sitting here. I think if you're not investing, it's definitely a risk rather than, like you can invest and blow up some money, but you'll still make a lot of money if you're invested in India. I think, the pockets. Hello, yeah. Yeah, so the good part is, now if I ask everybody that, if all of us in this auditorium, if we had to do a job from 9 to 6, it would be such a monotonous life. In India, 20 years back, life was like that. Like every man, every working woman, you have to go out, slog it out there, make some money. But, India has changed. You have a lot of options to generate alternate incomes apart from your salaries. I think the seniors here would probably, not have seen those days. But, right now there are days you can sit here, invest in any stocks in India, across the world, not just stocks. You park your money in fixed deposits in banks. They lend to corporates. Now, on the stock exchange, you can even buy those bonds. Like you can lend to a Tata Group and make 9% on those bonds. That's absolutely safe. So the good part is the Indian markets have also opened up. Investing has never been so easy. And if you ask me which are the pockets that we should watch out for, I think, we all come under that top 1 crore families of India. Whatever we consume is what we should invest in. Okay, we like to travel. Travel companies will do really well over next 10 years. The hotels, the airlines. We like to upgrade our lives, buy better jewelry, better cars, better homes. So, the good real estate developers, the jewelry companies, the fashion companies, the food companies. I think there are plenty of options. India has 6,000 companies, Malik. If you were born in Nepal, Nepal just has 38 listed companies. So you should be blessed that we are born in India. Everybody can select what they want. And, apart from this consumer theme, I think the energy transition, which we spoke about here in a very big way, India still needs import 75% of oil and gas. So that is one thing which continuously pinches Indian economy, Indian currency, Indian current account balances. I think we are trying very hard to reduce that dependency. So energy transition is going to be one very big theme. And factory efficiency is also one very big theme. In India we use a lot of coal, stubble, things which generate a lot of pollution. So I think this whole energy efficiency theme and less pollution, I think that also a big theme to watch out for. And then lastly, we all talk a lot about Gen Z. Startups want to target the Gen Z and the young people. But I think in India, the rich people are the ones who are going to spend. So, I call this the grey economy. People who are more than 40s, they are the ones who are going to have a lot of money and they're going to spend. So, things that they do, somebody who's developing a senior living homes. I think somebody who can give a personalized, my own field, personalized wealth management services. You can have a chatbot do everything, but once you have money, you want somebody to be your relationship manager and do things for you. You don't want to have a software, guiding your investments or your life. So I think a lot of areas, India is a big buffet. Just go out there and be invested. You can't afford to be.
Thanks, Digant. You put it so nicely, so it's the feeling is so optimistic. Thanks a lot for that. Maybe Prashant. So while we spoke about a variety of topics, but India can't really grow without focus on its logistics sector, right? I mean, 14% of GDP, and there's a lot of scope for improvement. So, and obviously NITIE itself is a hub for realizing, PM's Gati Shakti scheme. So, what are your thoughts on that? How do we really crack that puzzle to be a world-class, logistics hub till 2030?
Right. So I think on Gati Shakti, right, or logistics, if we talk about logistics cost, uh, India's logistic cost is almost double of all the advanced economies. So the pie is like 16-15% as compared to what 8 or 9% it should be, right? So we are bleeding there a lot, and the Gati Shakti is one project, and then I recently started reading about it, right? So it goes back up to 2017 when the government started the whole construct plan, and then construct India plan, and then started putting things in place. But then government is government. Any government program that runs with a lot of delays, and then if it is in the infrastructure space, you are going to bleed a lot, right? Even today also, more than 100 crores per day we are bleeding, specifically that plan itself. And then it has gone through multiple changes. They rebranded it recently to Gati Shakti. 16 ministries are coming together. There is a lot of program management and project management they have put in place. So I think that is one area where we have to really do well. While you'll have the plans and you'll have the programs, and then you'll try and connect all of these different logistical connectivities, right? But the project management, probably I don't know whether the bureaucracy in the government can really handle that. So maybe there is an opportunity for the institutes and industries to come together and partner with the government in some way, right? So for example, if I'm in the field of project and program management, how can I contribute, right? So we don't know what are the avenues, how do we do that? So maybe government needs to look at that aspect, and 16 ministries coming together, that itself is a very big step which government has taken. So long way to go as far as logistics is concerned.
Thanks, Prashant. Long way to go, but a lot of reasons to be confident. But it's key to get that logistics cost down as a percentage. Sure. So I think we can keep going on and on with this excellent tool, but I think organizers have given a hard stop time. So maybe very quickly, if any closing comments from any of you, and then we just kind of open the floor for a couple of questions from the audience, if at all.
I just want to vision is good, right? I mean, we all in the supply chain, we all do demand planning, forecasting, but we all know forecast is never accurate. Similarly, vision is just a milestone there, like, okay, which you have to plan for to achieve it. But still there are even though we have, first good thing we have done is we have put up the vision. Because last few governments or the last few years, it was just like, carry on guys, okay, kind of a things. So one thing is, we always say the goal setting is important, the smart goal setting is, and that's what can be seen in the Vision 2030, which government has put up. So one thing is good. Second thing is executing on this one. And one big challenge always I face in execution, and probably some of you have already seen in your corporate world also. Your top management comes, says that, okay guys, this is the target for our 2024 and let's do this and all. But at the end of the year, you see that we haven't achieved this. My observation is that that happens mainly because of what I call it as a top floor to shop floor disconnect. Like what happened is, you are very good, top management is very good in putting up the vision. They put up a very fancy, they attend a lot of Gartner workshops. So they come out with, okay, this is what we have to do it. Okay, but then the people who are going to execute it, or like we said, like there is a different regulations in the state government, and so that is where the actual execution problem comes up. And I have seen myself in a corporate world as well as in the governance as well, that this is a big disconnect. One very simple example I'll tell you. Government has said we wanted to have like smart city projects. Okay, as part of the smart cities, and especially I'm from Nagpur with the Nitin Gadkari's, every small road is now having a footpath. Okay, but that was a government vision that we should have people to walk on the footpath and all that. Contract was given, the contractor has built the footpath, but this footpath is not of use. because people are parking a car there. The corporator has put a bench on this. There are people who has encroachment on this one. So the point is, there was a vision, but it was, and the action has also been taken, but it was not executed well. So I think this is a problem we are going to face for 2030 as well. And to ensure we don't fail here, I think we need to make Vision 2030 is more like a Jan Andolan, what government has done for the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, where every person was talking about it and the message was very clear from top to down. I think if we don't do that, I guess government will still call it Vision 2030, but we probably may fail to achieve this.
Thanks, Anand. That's a great point. All hands on deck. Otherwise we can't realize this. Anybody else or?
See, I think given the consumer story, and just started with that, closing also 2 examples over there. I mean, gamers, right? I mean, India has 500 million gamers right now, okay? And out of that, 37% actually pay to play, right? Which is not a bad sign. This number used to be 5% earlier. So, this consumer, and we've spoken about a lot, right? If you look at it, if this is given, the demand, and, I think the 2 axes are going to be the pace of digital adoption, manufacturing, and agriculture on one axis. And the other axis is going to be government policies, how consistent they are. Again, I'm again and again using the word consistency is important here, more than great policies. Okay, so if we are able to maintain this, in good direction, I think we will achieve our vision.
Thanks.
I think, and in the end, I think, see, all this depends on, really having good people at the forefront and at the ground level. 120 years back, Swami Vivekananda said that give me 100 good men and I'll change the world. He didn't get even 10 good men, and we really could not do much. I think the situation is not very, very different now. So on a lighter note, I would like to say that we need 100 good women maybe, and then this vision can be easily. So I think, more and more participation from them should, also be a big part, and I think the vision naturally gets achieved.
Thanks, Digant. Amazing way to close it. I think we are, sadly, we're out of time. Do we have time for a couple of questions, or I think we can skip it? Okay, there's one more event lined up. So, sorry. Sorry, audience, I think, but you can always catch up with the panelists, so thanks, everyone. I think I'll hand it back to the team. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for being part of the discussion and sharing your insights and thoughts that have definitely added a lot of value to the topic. The entire NITIE Alumni Association passes on their sincere appreciation for all your efforts, not only for today, but all you do to keep the NITIE's flag flying high. I mean, on a professional and personal level, we really appreciate your enthusiastic participation, and we know that your time is precious, so we're immensely grateful that you are here. Also, a very special thanks to our moderator, Mr. Maulik Desai. Moderator's role is of the most important to guide a successful discussion. Thank you so much, sir, for leading this panel. I want to request our director, sir, to please join us on stage and show our appreciation to the panel through mementos. Thank you. Firstly, Mr. Digant Haria. Mr. Prashant Kumar Kale. Mr. Rajat Mahajan. Mr. Rahul Nene. Mr. Ganesh Iyer. Mr. Pavan Sarda, and Mr. Maulik Desai. I want to request all the faculty members present here to please gather for a quick photograph on the stage. Thank you so much, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to thank Professor Manoj Tiwari, our Distinguished Director, Professor Hema Date, our Dean for Alumni Affairs and International Affairs, Professor Sumi Jha, Honorable Secretary, Alumni Association, and Professor K.S. Ranjani, person in charge for the NITIE Alumni Committee. The Student Committee is fortunate to have your unwavering support and guidance. Thank you so much. Lastly, a big thank you